Hi everybody, welcome back to another week of fun learning together. Hopefully you guys had a great Easter. I know the weather's supposed to be nice. I'm recording this a week ahead of time, so hopefully everything goes well. We are moving into section 5.4 for today. So for today, we are looking at division. Long division for today, to be specific. So we're going to start, before anybody panics, we're going to actually start all the way back with what you probably learned. I'm thinking this was around 3rd or 4th grade, basing on where my own kids are at in school. We're going to start with some basic long division just to make sure that we're remembering the basics before I move into the polynomial long division. So here we go. So starting out, how many times does 3 go into 6? So we're only looking at the first two numbers. And 3 goes into 6 2 times. So you put the number up top. Now as we're going through this, I'm going to suggest that you're kind of looking at this from a process point of view. Kind of look and see what my process is as we go through this. Okay? So once we put the 2 up top, then you multiply. 2 times 3 is 6. And then we subtract. 6 minus 6 is 0. And then we drop down the next part, and we start over. How many times does 3 go into 7? Well, 3 goes into 7 twice. And then we distribute. 3 times 2 is 6. Then we subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1. And then we bring down the next number, and we start over. The same process over and over. How many times does 3 go into 12? It goes in 4 times. And we distribute. 4 times 3 is 12. And subtract. And there is no remainder. So 672 divided by 3 is 224. Notice there is no remainder, which means that 3 is a factor of 672, right? Because 3 times 224 will give you 672. So it is a factor. All right, let's try the next one. There's a lot more going on this one. All right, so we can't really say how many times does 4 go into 1, because it doesn't. So we actually have to start with the 12. So how many times does 4 go into 12? And that's 3 times. So put the 3 up top, and then we distribute. 3 times 4 is 12. And then subtract. 12 minus 12 is nothing. Bring down the next number, and we start over. How many times does 4 go into 5? Once. We distribute. 1 times 4 is 4. And then we subtract, and that gives me 1. Bring down the next number, and we start over. How many times does 4 go into 13? Well, it goes in 3 times. And then you multiply. 3 times 4 is 12. And subtract. And 13 minus 12 is 1. Bring down the next number. We start over. How many times does 4 go into 16? Well, that's 4. And then you multiply. 4 times 4 is 16. And subtract. That gives me 0. Drop down the next number. How many times does 4 go into 3? Well, it doesn't, so 0. 0 times 4 is 0. And subtract. We get 3. Bring down the 5. How many times does 4 go into 35? And that would be 8. And we multiply. 8 times 4 is 32. And subtract. And we have 3 left over and nothing left to bring down. Now, from here, every year I have students say, oh, you put a big R and then a 3. And whatever teacher taught you that, it drives me nuts. I don't want a big R, okay? The remainder of 3 goes up top over, that's a terrible 3, sorry about that, over whatever it is you're dividing by is the denominator. So 1,253,635 divided by 4 is 313,408 3/4. So if I were to ask you, is 4 a factor of that giant 1 million number? The answer is no. It's not a factor because it didn't go nicely, right? It's not a pretty answer. All right, so there's long division. I know I went through that kind of quick. If you're still like, what the heck did she just do? Go back and rewatch this video, okay? But the big thing here is process. I'm always looking at how many times did it go into that. I put the number on the top, and then we multiplied, right? And then I wrote that number down, and then we subtracted, and then we started over. So that's kind of our process. So moving forward, let's look now. We have f of x equals, and again, that's just like y equals, that's just his name, 6x squared plus 7x plus 2 divided by 2x plus 1. So first, let's set this up. All right, so we have 6x squared plus 7x plus 2 divided by 2x plus 1. All right, now this is where things get a little bit different, so hang with me. I'm going to go kind of slow through this. And again, you can always pause or rewind and re-listen to what I just said, okay? So when we start out, we are only looking at the 2x and the 6x squared. Okay, I'm ignoring that 1, I'm ignoring the 7x, and I'm ignoring the 2. Now, I'm not always going to ignore them, but that's just how we start. So what do you multiply 2x, right? Let's make sure we're okay here. Oops, sorry. So what do you multiply 2x by to get 6x squared? What do you multiply 2x to get 6x squared? All right, so you have to multiply by 3x. Okay, right? Because next thing, just like before, you multiply. So this is where we'll distribute and we can get the rest of the problem back in here. So 3x times 2x. Let's get rid of this line here so we don't get confused. Maybe. All right, maybe not. All right, that's going to give me 6x squared. And then we distribute to the other term, 3x times 1 is 3x. Now, before when we did long division, which is numbers, this is where we would subtract. Now, when we are subtracting, kind of a little side note up here, guys, if I am subtracting an entire piece, right, I'm subtracting this whole thing, what happens to every sign inside of there? Right, you'd have to distribute that. Both of my signs would actually change. So instead of saying subtract, we're going to say change signs. Okay, because that's what happens. You subtract an entire piece, all of the signs change. All right, so subtract or change your signs. So we have 6x squared minus 6x squared cancels. If that first one does not cancel, you did something wrong. Okay, it should. Then I have 7x minus 3x is 4x. And then bring down the rest of your problem, and we start over. What do you multiply 2x to get 4x? Well, you multiply by 2, a positive 2. All right, once you put the number at the top, you distribute. So 2 times 2x is 4x. 2 times 1 is a positive 2. And then instead of subtract, we say change your signs. So change my signs. 4x minus 4x cancels. 2 minus 2 cancels. There's nothing left to bring down. So this is the final answer. Now I want to make sure you understood what we just did. I asked you 2x plus 1 times what would give you 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. That's what I asked you in essence, right? When I asked you to divide, that's where you found 3x plus 2. So now you know how that factors. Now, right now you're like, oh my gosh, why do I have to do that? Can't I just factor it? And for this problem, yeah, you could have. You could have just factored it. But the problem is a lot of them don't factor so nicely. So we can't always just try to factor it. And again, this section 5.4, this whole week actually is going to be a stepping stone to next week where we look at solving things that we can't factor. Okay, so this is, just keep in mind, this is our stepping stone to get to that point. Okay, all right. All right, so let's go ahead and set it up. So we have x cubed plus 5x squared minus 7x plus 2 divided by x minus 2. All right, so as we get started, again, we're only looking at the first terms. What do you multiply x to get x cubed? Well, we need an x squared. So whatever you put up top, then we distribute. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times negative 2 is negative 2x squared. All right, from here, we normally subtract or change your signs. Okay, and then x cubed minus x cubed cancels. 5x squared plus 2x squared is 7x squared. And I'm going to go ahead and bring down the rest of the problem. Okay, my own personal belief, I just bring everything down at every step. That we don't lose anything. All right, and then the process starts over again. What do you multiply x to get 7x squared? Well, we would need a positive 7x. All right, so we put our 7x up at the top, and we are going to have to distribute that. So 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times negative 2 is negative 14x. And then we have to change our signs. So we only change the signs at the bottom. 7x squared minus 7x squared cancels. Negative 7x plus 14x is a positive 7x. Bring down the plus 2, and our process starts over. All right, so what do you multiply x to get 7x? Well, you multiply by a positive 7. And then we distribute. 7 times x is 7x. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. And then we have to change our signs. 7x minus 7x cancels. 2 plus 14 is 16. We have nothing left to bring down, so this right here, that is my remainder. So our remainder, do not use the giant R. We just add on our remainder. So plus, it is 16 over whatever it was you were dividing by, which is x minus 2. There we go. So if I would ask you, is x minus 2 a factor of the original problem? The answer is no. It's not a factor because it had a remainder. It did not divide nicely. All right, so moving on, number 3. Now, notice this one's written as a fraction. Don't panic. Fractions, remember, just mean divide. So we have 3x to the 4th minus 5x cubed plus 4x minus 6. And all of that is being divided by x squared minus 3x plus 5. All right, now notice this time we're dividing by 3 terms instead of 2. That's okay. We're going to still treat it the same way. We just have more things to distribute to. All right, so looking at the first ones. What do you multiply x squared to get 3x to the 4th? And you would multiply by 3x squared. So when we distribute, we would multiply those together to get 3x to the 4th. Distribute to the next one would give me negative 9x cubed, and distribute to the third one this time, and that gives me a positive 15x squared. All right, once we fill those in, don't forget to change your signs. So those signs change all the way through that line. 3x to the fourth minus 3x to the fourth cancels. Again, if it doesn't, we did something wrong. Negative 5x cubed plus 9x cubed is a positive 4x cubed. Now be very careful here. This is where a lot of people, if you're moving too fast, you're going to have problems. Because take a look at this. These right here that are lined up on top of each other, these are not like terms. Notice this one's an x squared, this one's just an x. So be careful. They don't always line up beautiful and perfect, okay? So you have to be careful here. All right, so we have minus 15x squared and the plus 4x and the minus 6, right? We just kind of dropped those down as we went. Okay, so just be careful that you're watching to make sure you actually are putting like terms together. All right, let's start over. What do you multiply? There we go. What do you multiply x squared to get 4x cubed? You'd have to multiply by a positive 4x. And we will distribute 4x times x squared is 4x cubed. 4x times negative 3x is negative 12x squared. And 4x times 5 is a positive 20x. All right, from there, we will go ahead and change our signs. Four x cubed minus 4x cubed, those will cancel out. Then we have negative 15x squared plus 12x squared is negative 3x squared. And then we have 4x minus 20x is negative 16x, and drop down the minus 6. All right, and we go again, back to the beginning. What do you multiply x squared to get negative 3x squared? And we need to multiply by negative 3. And we distribute negative 3 times x squared. It's negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times negative 3x is a positive 9x. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. And we change our signs. Negative 3x squared plus 3x squared cancels. This will give me a negative 25x, and that gives me a positive 9. Now I have nothing else to bring down. The question always is, how do you know when you're done? So to know if you're done or not, notice here I have an x squared. Is it possible to multiply x squared to make that a negative 25x? And no, I can't. I can't turn an x squared into an x, so therefore I am done. So at this point, that is my remainder, and we always add our remainders. So plus negative 25x plus 9 over, the remainder is always whatever you're dividing by. So x squared minus 3x plus 5. There we go. So the final answer then, if I would ask you, is x squared minus 3x plus 5 a factor of that problem? The answer is no. There is a remainder, so it is not a factor. All right, moving right along. Number 4. Again, there's a fraction bar, so the fraction bar just means divide. Now be careful, because this top part that we're supposed to be dividing, notice it's not in the right order. Since it's not in the right order, we got to write that the right way. So we have 4x squared plus 23x minus 16. All of that is being divided by x plus 5. All right, so first terms, what do you multiply x to get 4x squared? And you multiply by 4x. All right, we distribute. 4x times x is 4x squared. 4x times 5 is 20x. Change your signs. Those will cancel. 23x minus 20x is 3x. Bring down the minus 16, and we start again. What do you multiply x to get 3x? and you multiply by a positive 3. Then we distribute. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 5 is 15. And then don't forget, we need to change your sign. That cancels, and that gives me a negative 31. I have nothing left to bring down. I cannot multiply an x to make negative 31, so therefore that is my remainder. And we always add on our remainders. That's negative 31 over whatever you're dividing by, which is x plus 5. Is that a factor of the original problem? No. It's got a remainder, so it's not a factor. All right, so here it is in words for you. A polynomial is a factor if the remainder is 0. All right, so just kind of putting that, I've been talking about it all the way through, but there it is. So is x squared plus 1 a factor of 3x to the 4th minus 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus 5? Is it a factor or not? Well, in order to tell, we have to divide. All right, so let's set this up. So we have 3x to the 4th minus 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus 5. All right, and we are dividing by x squared plus 1. All right, so we start with the first ones. What do you multiply x squared to get 3x to the 4th? Well, we'd have to multiply by 3x squared. And then we distribute. So that gives me 3x to the 4th. Distribute. Positive 3x squared. And then we change our signs. And that one cancels. That gives me negative 7x. Oh, I was not watching like I told you guys to. What did I just about do? Did you guys see that? These are not like terms. So we have a negative 4x cubed, but then I have like terms here. They just didn't quite line up for me in this problem. So sorry about that. I caught my mistake. It happens pretty easily. So just make sure you're really cautious and watch those exponents. So that's going to give me a positive 9x squared and then plus 5. All right, then we start over. What do you multiply x squared to get negative 4x cubed? And we'd have to multiply by a negative 4x. All right, we distribute. That gives me negative 4x cubed. Distribute gives me negative 4x. And then we change our signs. So that cancels. That's going to give me, whoa, be careful, not like terms. I have a 9x squared plus 4x plus 5. Not like terms, be careful. All right, what do you multiply x squared to get 9x squared? You multiply by 9, a positive 9. So 9 times x squared is 9x squared. 9 times 1 is 9. And then we change our signs. Those will cancel. I have a 4x. Be careful of like terms. My like terms are actually here. And that's going to give me a negative 4. Can I keep going? I have an x squared. This is just an x. So to answer your question, no, I can't keep going. So that is my remainder. So we always add on our remainders. 4x minus 4 over whatever you're dividing by, which is x squared plus 1. Sorry, that got really crammed inside of there. That's my fault. All right, so is that a factor? No, not a factor, because there is a remainder. All right, so it is not a factor. All right, last one for today, guys, last one. Is x minus 2 a factor of x to the 5th minus 32? All right. Whew, looking at that x to the 5th minus 32, do you notice you're missing a lot of pieces in there, right? If If you're thinking about like how they stair step down, you have an x to the fifth, but you're missing x to the fourth, x to the third, x squared, and a plain x. So we got a lot of missing pieces, which usually means you're going to have a lot of things that don't line up right. But let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. So we'll set it up. So we have x to the fifth minus 32 divided by x minus 2. All right, so what do you multiply x to get x to the fifth? You multiply by x to the fourth. So we get x to the fifth minus 2x to the fourth. Change your signs. Not like terms. So we're going to have 2x to the fourth minus 32. And we start over. What do you multiply x to get 2x to the fourth? Well, you multiply by a positive 2x to the third. We distribute. 2x to the third times x is 2x to the fourth. 2x to the third times negative 2 is negative 4x to the third. Change your signs. Not like terms. So we have 4x to the third minus 32. And we start over. What do you multiply x to get 4x cubed? Well, you multiply by a positive 4x squared. Distribute. So we get 4x cubed minus 8x squared. Change your signs. Those will cancel. Not like terms. And we have 8x squared minus 32. And we start over. What do you multiply x to get 8x squared? Well, you multiply by a positive 8x. And we distribute to give me 8x squared. It gives me a negative 16x. And we change our signs. Those will cancel. Not like terms. 16x minus 32. And we start over. This problem is almost done, I promise. All right, what do you multiply x to get 16x? You multiply by 16. 16 times x is 16x. 16 times negative 2 is negative 32. And we change our signs. Cancels and that cancels. So there is no remainder. So that means, that means no remainder. It is in fact a factor. So yes, it is a factor because there is no remainder. Now, tomorrow's lesson will show you this exact same problem, or a problem like this, where I can actually solve it way faster. Tomorrow we're going to focus on synthetic division, which honestly is like probably one of my next favorite things to do. It's fun. It's different. It's something you've probably never seen before. The reason I don't just use that one is because it doesn't work on everything, unfortunately. But when we can use it, it is way faster. So make sure you know how to do long division. You will need to know how to do the problems the long way. But then tomorrow we're going to look at a faster way that works on some problems. Not all. A lot of them, but not all of them. All right, so if you have any questions, if you're not sure on anything, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, rewatch the video, watch it in slow motion, try a problem on your own before you continue watching. I think that's great to stop, try it, and then watch and see if you did it right. Just the same way I would have done if I was teaching you in class, where I would have been like, all right, this one's your turn. And I would let you do it before I went over it. So try that, go back, try them, practice the homework problems. But again, if you have any questions, need help with anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out, guys. I'm here to help you out. Just try not to fall too far behind with all this, otherwise it gets a bit overwhelming. All right, guys, good luck to you, and let me know if you need anything. We'll see you tomorrow.